Hello everybody, look who's back, it's me, GhostCritic. For those of you who have been around for a while, you know I didn't put a video up last week, and that's because I was on holiday. Myself and my partner went to Wales for a break, specifically Cardiff. We stopped over at the on the journey there, so we could break that up a little bit because it is quite away from where I live. And you know, being a comic book enthusiast, if you're going somewhere new you've never been before, what you do, go and look and see where the nearest comic book shops are. And I was going to be I thought I was going to cry. I thought I was going to cry because everywhere we stopped along the way, I just couldn't find anything. There was a particular village, I think it was called Hay on the Wire or Hay on the Way or something like that. And literally every single other store, shop, was either a second-hand bookshop, like an antiques collector's store, and I was thought, I've got to find something here. And while there were tiny, and I mean tiny little boxes of comics, the prices that these people were expecting me to pay for what was essentially rubbish. Let's be honest, if they'd have been really, really cheap, I wouldn't have minded so much, but they weren't exactly worth what they were asking for. I was just like, no, I'm sorry, I'm leaving your store. You could have had a lot of money from me, but ridiculous prices, you're getting nothing. And they were willing to budge on the prices, so they missed out. And then we got to Cardiff, and I got a bit worried there as well, because I had found all the kind of the main comic book stores. There was a Forbidden Planet. I don't know why I bother going to those anymore. It's basically a big, huge franchise store which wants to just sell you anything new. I don't know what they do with unsold issues from way back. Some of the places I've been in, they have maybe a long box in a dark corner, and they've kind of scribbled on the barcode to show that it's a reduced comic, but they're not very friendly people. I don't think most of them actually know what they're talking about, especially the bigger stores. They are just shop assistants who are going to scan your comic and send you on your way and take your money. So I've never expected to get much help from any of them. There was a guy, I'm not going to name the store, but you know, I had high expectations for it. When I walked in, it was like long box central. They were everywhere, and they would have been all very well organised, but the place was a mess. On top of these long boxes were huge big piles of other comics, and you just couldn't get anything. And then the one boxes that you could get it in at, again, the prices were astronomical for what they were. We're talking like mid-90s going into the late 90s, that really there isn't much to talk about there. You know, all the X-Men stuff that was kind of like, they're $2 a penny, you can get them anywhere. And they were asking up to £5 an issue. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. And I walked out of there with nothing. But whenever you go anywhere, go and look down alleyways, little tiny arcades that you think there will be nothing there, because I finally found somewhere. And it's one of those things where you're walking past the window, yeah, it's a second-hand bookstore, maybe they'll have comics in, I'm exhausted by now, do I really want to go in? But just keep your eye out, because there was a tiny little sign saying upstairs, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, comics. So I was like, I'm going in here, I might be a while. And then when I went upstairs, whole slew of books, reasonably priced, and I just thought, thank God I'm actually going to go back with a decent amount of comics. And apart from it obviously being on holiday, it's going to have been worth my while. While I was I'm going to show you those obviously in a minute. I haven't been to pick up my new comics from last week yet. I'm just going to pick them up with this week's. But while I was out there, I did go into a comic book store and look at the new stuff, thinking I better just pick up these because they're not on my pull list, just in case he has none left. I'll quickly show you those. We've got issue 5 of Dark Knight 3, The Master Race. I don't honestly know what Mark Millar is doing with this. It's not really saying anything. You know, the first issue was very provocative, it was very controversial, it was very much about that time it came out, you know, kind of like the news stations, the political views at the time. I can't honestly remember what the second volume was about, and this, I don't get what it is. It's just a Batman and Superman story, and Batman is quite old in this, and so is Superman to some extent. There is nothing, I'm not going to say controversial, because why does a comic have to be controversial, but unlike its predecessor, it's not saying anything. Do you get me? Picked up Jupiter's Legacy 2 issue 1. As you will see from the video coming up, I talk a little bit about that, but this is the new series. Loving it. Obviously Frank Quitely on artwork, love his style, so I thought I'd pick that up. And also Rich Tomasi's new #1, She-Wolf. He's just come off one of my kind of favourite indie series of the last year and previous year, Dark Corridor, that kind of crime noir that was very kind of underground art style. This is very much the same. It is a little bit chaotic, it is a little bit all over the place. I was a tiny little bit confused, but it's still that great Richard Tomasi storytelling and art style which kind of drew me into Dark Corridor, so really enjoyed that. So those were the kind of the three odd ones I picked up, new anyway. So let's get on with the main set haul. I hope you enjoy this. Okay, so I'm just broken this haul down into two piles of books. This first pile is just kind of odds and ends that I kind of wanted to pick up just out of interest, or they were kind of filling in little gaps, stuff that I am collecting, stuff that I aren't collecting, and just had fun with these. These were mostly inexpensive books. As I said in the intro, anything that's really out of a bag would have cost me a 10p. So you just, some of these things you just, for 10p, come on, let's have a go. Doesn't matter what condition they are in, but let's crack on with Marvel's Strange Tales from the late 80s, 87. This was like not an anthology series, so to speak, but it did have a Cloak and Dagger story and a Doctor Strange story, and they're just kind of like odd little kind of short, maybe one or two issue storylines, but you know, Doctor Strange, huge fan. Cloak and Dagger, always an interesting character set there, but that's number 6. Found number 15 and number 16. So they were all that there was for the Strange Tales. Found one of Darwin Cook's Will Eisner's The Spirit, issue number 3. Great stuff, as always, great artwork, colouring by Dave Stewart. You will see his name come up a lot on this, and for good reason. He's just a great colourist. I love his style of colouring, and he fits Darwin Cook so well. Dr. Fate from 1989, #1 annual. It was interesting. I like the character of Dr. Fate. If I can find something, I mean, there's a little sticker on there. I'm gonna have to try and peel off. But it was 10p. I mean, all the ones that are 10p, you can see they've got this kind of scribble over the kind of DC or whatever the imprint is. But for 10p, when in fact it actually cost me nothing, why do I care? But it was a weird story nonetheless. I have been collecting these Mark Millar's Jupiter's Circle Legacy, and I picked up Jupiter's Legacy issue 1 of the new series that's just come out. But this Jupiter's Circle, I think this completes this run. I think it went about 5 or 6 issues, but this completes that. I also found Jupiter's Legacy issue number 5. I think I need one more issue of that to complete that series, but great Frank Quitely artwork in there. You'll see some more Conan later, but there was this odd one, like the cover, good old Marvel sword and sorcery with loincloths aplenty, but that was fun. Always when I find these Grendel titles, I always like to pick them up. I've got a huge stack of Grendels in one of my lock boxes, but I hadn't heard of this particular mini-series from the Grendel Tales, which is Devils and Deaths. It's issue number 2 of 2. I need to find number 1 now. Moving on to Seven Soldiers. This is the Manhattan Guardian one. I only have to find, I think it's issue 3 now of this. Still cannot find for the love nor money the Bulleteer. That's the only other mini-series that went with this whole Seven Soldiers that I still have to buy. Manhattan Guardian wasn't that great of all the sets of the mini-series that came out, but you know, collector, need the complete run. Another Moon Knight series that came out. This was back in, oh, let's have a look, let's get a bit closer, 1989. It's Mark Spector, Moon Knight. Lots of guest appearances in this run, so I picked up a few of these. This is number 9 with the Punisher, issue number 26, issue number 28, and issue number 35, again guest starring the Punisher. An odd one, Excalibur issue 27, to fill in a gap of my Excalibur run. Excalibur meets the Nth Man. A Silver Surfer from volume 3 to fill in a gap, issue 103. This is a mini-series from Marvel. This is issue 3 of 4, the true story of comics' greatest foursome. So look forward to reading that. The Question from 1989 with Denny O'Neil writing. Fun, kind of humorous take as it kind of went on, but I've got quite a few of these now. Always pick them up when I find them. This was quite a find, I've got to say. Mobius, whenever you see Mobius, you've got to pick him up. He might not be drawing this, but he's certainly on writing duties. The Elsewhere Prince from the Epic Comics line. This is issue number 2. I believe this went on for about 6 issues. Looking forward to getting into that. And then finally for this batch, I don't collect the New Mutants, but this was issue 50, double-sized issue. It's not in the greatest of shapes. There's a little bit of kind of, it feels like water damage on the front, but I paid nothing for it, so great stuff. Okay, let's move along to the other. This is more the runs that I'm trying to collect. And how exciting. Let's just pull that down a little bit so you can see the whole cover. It's my Daredevil run I'm trying to complete. This was the most expensive comic of the week that I bought. Issue number 71. It cost me £4, which is not that big of a deal really. There's a kind of little, you probably can't see it, no you can't. There's a little corner chew on the bottom right, and there's a slight line going down. But apart from that, it's a decent enough copy. It's all in one piece. There's no pages missing, nothing cut out of it. Great story. Just a nice addition for my Daredevil run. We have issue 252, a double-sized issue, a Fall of the Mutants tie-in. Yes, there were even tie-ins back in the 80s. Moving on to 268. It was kind of interesting reading these because they're kind of from the late 80s, and it's got Ann Nocenti writing it, and it is incredibly politically aware, I would guess. It deals with a lot of issues. This is when Daredevil kind of went off on his own, left Hell's Kitchen, and it just deals with a lot of kind of, well, what was there? There was kind of like, obviously, there was animal cruelty, there was stuff to do with America and being proud and patriotic and how far that takes people, bits about terrorism. And while that is kind of interesting, and the Senti hits it over the head with a hammer. She is not subtle about her opinions on these topics, but you know, they were still good reads, and there's some nice Romita Jr. covers on here. How can you tell? All those lines! Issue 282 with Mephisto and Silver Surfer on there. 283, guest appearance from Captain America. Issue 291. Issue 306 with a Spider-Man guest appearance. 312. 322, part of the Fall from Grace storyline that went about, I think it was about 6 or 7 issues. 339 with Kingpin. Issue 372, guest appearance by Ghost Rider. And finally, a double-sized issue of 375, Dr. Fear, Mr. Fear, villain, trying to break down Daredevil, as they all do. We've got Karen Page being accused of murder, but that was quite a good read. So they were all the Daredevils. Moving on to some Conans from the Dark Horse series, Kurt Busiek, issue number 10. I always love these, and I love finding them for great prices. Issue 33, Dogs of the Hills storyline. Then we move on to the King Conan series. There was lots of mini-series on these. You've got to be very careful that you don't kind of pick up the same issues again and again. This is part 1 of the Scarlet Citadel 4-issue mini-series of Conan, King Conan I should say, and also issue 2, which does actually complete that particular mini-series for me. Here we are with a 4-issue mini-series of King Conan the Phoenix on the Sword, issue 2 of 4. And then there's a mini-series of Conan. This is a 2-issue mini-series called Island of No Return. Great covers on these. Love, love, love it. Moving on to a little bit of DC, The Spectre from the kind of mid-90s, issue number 45. Again, these were like incredibly politically motivated. There was a lot about kind of prejudice, homophobia in these first couple of issues, and again the idea of patriotism, especially obviously in America, given these are American comics, and how far some people will take it. Issue number 48, 49, again some great covers on these, and issue number 56. The last section of this, it's all Fantastic Four in various guises. This is the FF from Hickman. Let's see, this is more to do with the kids. The original Fantastic Four, they've all gone kind of space trotting and left them in charge with, well, Doom plays a big part in this series, let's put it that way. We've got issue 13. Issue number 14, and this storyline dealing with the battle with the Celestials. And issue 15, yes, that is Power Pack on the cover. We all love a bit of Power Pack. Finally, the run of the original series of Fantastic Four. This was issue number 212 from 1979. Shame that it's a 12p one, but it was, I can't even remember how much this was, but for that number, going back that far, I wasn't bothered about paying what it was. It was probably about a couple of quid, if that, but great stuff. Issue 357, obviously filling in lots of gaps here on my Fantastic Four run. Issue 367, that's an Infinity War crossover. 368, continuing that crossover. 372, and there's all sorts of guest stars there. There's Spider-Man, there's the Devastator, there's Power Scrolls. Oh, there's loads in that one. Great stuff. Always nice to have a Doom-inspired story. 380. 406. And finally, this is issue 60 of one of the volumes of Fantastic Four, but you can tell that they were gearing up to renumber it because they put what the number would have been if it had kept going, 489. So, great stuff. Big comic haul. Thank goodness I found something by the end of the holiday. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.